Good morning. Here we are for Good Gosh. Try to say those together. It comes out Goosh. We're looking at chapter 19 and entrepreneurs. And basically this chapter doesn't talk enough about entrepreneurs for my liking, but it does talk about the forms of business. So we'll follow the chapter, and then I will probably throw some more information in about entrepreneurs in class. Let's start with our terminology. Okay, they bring up some interesting words that sometimes we use maybe in a different sense. There's joint and several liability, and you have to be saying, huh? What that is, it's a means of when you're in a partnership, if you want to sue, you would maybe, if you have several partners, use the doctrine of joint and several liabilities, which means there are several partners that may or may not be suing either together or separately. And there's disassociation, which is this right here, which basically is saying in a business situation, I want to disassociate myself from that firm, be that, corporate or be that partnership. That's usually found within a partnership, but you will disassociate yourself from the firm. An LLC, lots of acronyms here. It's a limited liability company, and that's a company that offers the limited liability of a corporation, because remember, a corporation, the shareholders don't have true liability, only their investment, and the tax advantages of a partnership. Now, the advantages of a partnership for tax purposes is you only pay taxes once. The business itself does not pay taxes, the partners only pay taxes. So that's a benefit. So you have limited liability partnerships, and those are interesting. They're hybrid, okay, and it's used by professionals who normally do business in a partnership, such as lawyers. Usually you'll find lawyers in a partnership, and it's similar. The tax income passes through, so to speak, to the partners, and they pay tax on it. But there's also limited liability for what the other partner may do, which is a bit of a protection. What else do we have? Sole proprietorship. I just kind of threw that in there. I think we talk about sole proprietorship and don't really explain it. That's the simplest business form there is, and I believe about 80 to 90% of all businesses are sole proprietorships in the United States. These are what we typically call mom and pops, but they can be much larger than that. That's when one person owns a business, no matter the size, and has full control, but also can lose their personal wealth through the business if it were to close up. That was a left-handed way of saying it, I guess. Syndicate, and a syndicate is sort of like an investment group that gets together, and they create an investment group. So those are the new terminologies. We're going to encounter some of them down here as I go through the lecture, and we will explain them as we go along. We're going to have a question at the end of this group. Obviously, let's just set those off right now. We'll have a question there, and a question here, and a question here. that should keep us all occupied as we go along. So let's look at the major business forms that are introduced into this chapter. You have a sole proprietorship, which we just talked about. These are the mom and pops, and quite honestly, this is where a lot of entrepreneurs start as a sole proprietorship, and then they either become a limited liability company or they will turn into a corporation. Let's see, I'm trying to think of Facebook. Kind of came up through the ranks as one of these. But a mom and pop, there are probably, there are about 80 to 90% mom and pops in the country. They kind of keep the country rolling. And they come and go rather quickly. And most of the reason why they don't do well is simply because the people who start them have great ideas, but they don't have a business management sense. So that's why you might be getting a business administration degree, is to kind of help stabilize your company once you get it going. Then there are partnerships, and there are many kinds of partnerships. A typical partnership is equal ownership and liability. There will be partnership agreements. It's pretty straightforward. Usually you'll have a lawyer draw them up, and the partnership agreement will explain how many hours are expected to be worked, the investment and the distribution of capital and or profit, and also how the partnership will be dissolved if it is to be dissolved. Limited liability partnerships, it's limited liability to the general public or to the company, and there's no partnership taxes. The income flows right through to the partner, and they themselves pay taxes on that profit. You have limited partnerships, and that's where you're going to have a general partner who has much more power and several limited partners. There's limited liability here. Let's see, what else can I tell you about a limited partnership? The amount of loss would be limited to the investment that the partners make in the partnership. We have corporations with shareholders. Taxes are paid kind of twice. They're paid by the company because it is an entity and considered a person, and they are paid by the shareholders when they receive dividends or sell their stock. But there's no liability except for the initial investment by the shareholders. There are limited liability companies, and this is kind of the best of both worlds. You have the liability of a corporation, limited to your investment, and the taxes of a partnership, so that means the profit is passed through the company to the partners, and the income tax is paid from there. We have at the bottom a comparison that I will go through here in a minute, but I want to go through the rest of these. And you have a question that needs to be answered, so go take care of the question, and I will go prepare for special business forms. And here we are at special business forms, and my goodness, we have a lot of those also. We have joint ventures, syndicates, joint stock companies, business trust companies, and cooperatives. A joint venture, two entities join forces in a project. It may not be a permanent joining. They may only be together for that project. Same principles as a partnership. There's limited activities and limited power on both sides, but it's a joint venture that they're moving forth. You have syndicates, which is an investment group, and that can be like about any form. A lot of actually people just get together and form their own investment group, and that would be kind of a syndicate. There usually are there's some papers drawn up, there's some agreements drawn up, and the larger it gets, the more agreements you're going to have. You have joint stock companies, and that's a hybrid of a corporation and a partnership. They actually have transferable stock, which you can transfer to anybody you wish. And there's there's a form agreement, and it's in the sense of a partnership, but it's not an entity. Okay, it has some of the characteristics of a corporation, but it's not. It's a sort of a quasi type company that gets together, joint stock. You have a business trust company, has a trust agreement. There are beneficiaries, obligations, and power lie with the trustees who manage the business trust for the beneficiaries, and the profits are distributed to the beneficiaries. There's several high-income people will develop a business trust for their children that is managed by somebody else, but their children always have the access. And there are several other examples of a business trust. They'll pop up. And we have cooperatives, which are fairly common, but we're just not aware that they are cooperatives. And what a cooperative is when a group of people get together and they pool their resources, and they provide a service to their members. I think there are several credit unions would be considered maybe a cooperative. Ace Hardware is a cooperative. Many people don't know that. Land of Lakes is a cooperative. There are many food cooperatives in large cities where people get together and pool their resources and bring in fresh produce. Many of the people then work voluntarily within that co-op each week to keep it going. Cooperatives are becoming much more popular than they used to be. So those are special forms of business. Again, we have a question. So go click on the answer, and then we will meet back at franchises. And so I'll wait for you here. You're back. Franchises. Type of franchises. I'm not sure. I mean, when you say franchise, everybody just thinks of one great big lump. There really are like three kinds, and there's a distribution franchise, which is similar to an auto dealership where you have the rights to distribute the product. You have a chain style, and you can see a chain style would be different than a distribution, because a chain style is usually fast foods, and it's a McDonald's or an Arby's or a Burger King. Many of them out there. And then there is a manufacturing franchise, such as Pepsi-Cola, where they actually manufacture the product under the franchise charter. There are many laws governing franchises because they're becoming so prolific. There's actually federal regulations, and there's a franchise rule that talks about fairness and openness of or transparency when you're developing the agreement. There's also state regulations that are very similar to federal, and they have a disclosure document that says you must disclose everything about the franchise to the person thinking about buying it. They're really very strict about this. So it's not you just don't walk out and say, oh, I want that franchise. There are many steps that you have to follow through. And some of it is due to federal and state regulation for protecting whoever wants to buy a franchise. Then there's a franchise contract, and they're hoping it should be done in good faith and fair dealing. There may be territorial rights involved in that, such as, I think, Starbucks. In fact, all of them, I'm sure, have territorial rights, but Starbucks comes to mind, or H&R Block comes to mind also, about territorial rights. And then there are management requirements, and there's usually many stipulations about how it will be managed, who will be in charge, and the rules of employment. Right now there's a big tug-of-war between McDonald's and their franchises, trying to actually legally decide whether McDonald's is responsible for what some of their franchises do as far as employment practices are concerned. That one's one to be watched. And then to terminate a franchise, you can terminate it for a cause, and that's on either side. But again, there are steps that need to be gone through to dissolve that, or disassociate. I guess I could use this new word we just came across. Disassociate the termination. So here we are at the end, and there's one more question. So I hope this has helped a little bit. I would like to talk more about entrepreneurs, and we will do that in the classroom. So thank you much. Have a good day. See you in class.